Hi everyone, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And it is cold out here this week. How cold, you ask? Well, cold enough for all the car washes to be shut down, which explains this mucky car. My apologies about that. We're actually down into the minus 20s here right now, a real cold snap. And it's times like these when climate change deniers come out and say, see, what about, there's no climate change. But the fact is, it's real, it's here, it's with us, and people's purchasing decisions are being reflected by that. So it means that a lot of companies are now offering up hybrid alternatives in their vehicles, and one of the original hybrid choices was the Prius from Toyota. And in 2012, the Prius V was added to the mix, the wagon variant of this vehicle. Now, the Prius V has become exceptionally popular since it first came out, mainly among cabbies, to be honest with you, because it's proven to be incredibly reliable, it's quite fuel efficient, and it has that extra cargo capacity that you don't get in the typical Prius. But here's my big issue with the Prius V right now, and that's that in 2016, the Prius liftback, the traditional Prius that we know, had a complete redesign from the ground up. It's lighter, it's more fuel efficient, it's a bit more fun to drive as well. I don't know why, but the Prius V was not given the same treatment. So this is largely the same vehicle that we have had since 2012. It had a bit of a facelift in 2015, but that's it. So let's take a look at the Prius V, compare it to that liftback that I reviewed about a year ago for you on the program, and see if in fact this is still a good choice for families. That's this week here on Family Wheels. I'm excited to be back in this nice warm vehicle. It is cold out there this week. I'm also just really excited to be in the Prius V in general with you because it's a vehicle that kind of has its own little niche going on. There are a lot of companies out there that offer hybrid crossovers and SUVs, but if you're looking for a more traditional kind of station wagon, there's not much out there with a hybrid system on board. We look at some of the competition. I guess you could say the Lexus CT200H would be a bit comparable, although it's a bit smaller and a bit more of a luxury vehicle. There's also the Ford C-Max, which you can get with a hybrid system, but it's not really a wagon, so it's kind of in this world on its own. And you know what? For a little hybrid workhorse like this, which has such proven reliability, has an average fuel economy in the city of about 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers according to Toyota, 6 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway. So it's actually better in urban environments than it is on the highway. So it really is intended for that stop and go kind of environment like taxi drivers are in all the time. It comes in at just under $29,000 for the base price, and that's a pretty solid price point for a vehicle with this hybrid system on board. The downside to that is that it's a very basic car at that price. You're getting Bluetooth connectivity, you're getting a rear backup camera, you're getting this 6.1-inch infotainment system touchscreen, but otherwise, yeah, there's not much to it, and it doesn't feel like a particularly high-end car. A lot of cheap materials in the Prius V, a lot of clunky feeling kind of surfaces as well. Even when you close the doors, it kind of feels rattly and not particularly solid or high-end. Then when you climb up into the higher level trims of the Prius V, you can get the luxury package, which brings the price just over $30,000, and here in this technology package that we've got here this week, it's just shy of $35,000. We've got things like Softex seating surfaces. That's a faux leather product, which is pretty darn convincing. We've got this panorama sunroof. We've got heated front seats, which I'm disappointed not to see as standard equipment. And then also in the technology package, we've got things like lane keeping assist systems, adaptive cruise control, forward collision braking. If you're not braking quickly enough, the car's going to take over for you. Stuff like that. But even still, it just does not feel particularly high-end, even though it's got this extra package tied onto it. At $35,000, you know, just a few $1,000s on top of that, and I was into a nicely equipped Lexus CT200H a couple of years ago on the program, which felt a little bit sportier. Granted, it's a bit smaller, but it did feel like a much more high-end, solid vehicle. It really is a rather mishmashed interior here in the Prius V. A weird mixture of buttons and switchware that seems to have been pulled from different vehicles from Toyota's past. One thing that I find crazy crazy is where the heated seats are placed on this car. Way down here underneath the buttons and switches for the dashboard. I have to go hunting for them. In fact, it would be a fun challenge to see how long it would take somebody to find the heated seats in this car. They're really difficult to reach for the passenger as well because they're more oriented toward the driver. One thing my wife really complained about was this center armrest, which for me isn't a big deal because I'm a taller guy, but for her, every time she got into this vehicle, she was bumping her elbow on this rather hard plastic on the side here because it does sit rather high. She said for her, total deal breaker. She would not buy this car strictly because of this armrest. Then when we look at the seats in this vehicle, while I do love this Softex material for wiping them clean, for durability, I don't love the comfort in the seats on the Prius V. They're not very supportive. They're very spongy feeling to the point where even after a half hour of driving, my bum and my back are starting to kind of tire out. It just seems like when you get into this car that you're kind of seeing where the Toyota brand was. And then when we look at the Prius liftback, it's got that new global architecture. The first Toyota vehicle to include that means that it's kind of a sense for where the company is going. And as a result, I'm just really not blown away by this car. It's also very, very noisy in here. It's the loudest car that we've ever tested on family wheels using our decibel reader. So at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, same stretch of road, we've reached 74 decibels this week, which is pretty unheard of. It's a very loud ride. And the big reason for that is because it's got a little 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine on board. And when you get it up to highway speeds, it really does have to work very hard in order to keep those speeds up, which is why you're not getting the same kind of fuel efficiency numbers on the highway as you'd see in the city with the Prius V. Another thing that I've noticed with this vehicle, I look at the outside temperature right now, and we're at minus 27 degrees Celsius, and the hybrid system in this car isn't nearly as effective when it gets down to those temperatures. In fact, I've seen numbers on some mornings when I've started this car cold on my way to work that have gone all the way up about 12, 13 liters per 100 kilometers. That's not even as good as our big Volvo station wagon with a set of winter tires on board and a turbocharged V6. So if you're looking at this for colder weather conditions, be prepared to see your fuel economy numbers suffer in a big way. That said, any car in these temperatures is going to suffer in terms of its fuel efficiency. And once you get it up to operating temperature and you're going for more than just a quick haul down the block, our average fuel efficiency here this week has been 6.3 liters per 100 kilometers, which is still really excellent for a car with a pretty reasonably sized second row and a really excellent trunk as well. Talking of that second row and throwing your family in this vehicle, a great thing about the Prius V also is that it has a top Safety Pick Plus rating from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. It's performed very well historically in terms of safety from that organization. Well, here's a surprise. I was not expecting to have this much headroom and legroom in the Prius V. I've got my pom-pom toque on. I'm 6'2", and there's even room for the pom-pom still. This is really very impressive, and I guess it's no wonder that this vehicle has become so popular as a cab over the years. It's really darn good back here. Another thing that I like about the higher levels in the Prius V are these Softex leather seats, or faux leather, I guess I should say. They're very convincing. They're also very durable, and unlike many other cars right now that have these tiny pinhole perforations in the second row, you're not going to find that here in the Prius V. It means that cleaning up after your kids is going to be a lot more straightforward. Now in the Prius liftback, the traditional Prius that's been redesigned for 2016, the batteries are now stored under the second row, which means that you get a little bit more extra trunk space. Here in the Prius V, they're still stored in the trunk. The plus side to that is that the second row seats can actually move forward and backward. They're on rails, so that if you want to give yourself a little bit more in terms of cargo capacity in the back, you can do that really easily. The downside to that is that if you, let me take you back there and show you what I mean. If you've got a family dog that you want to put into the trunk, there's going to be a gap back there where the seats would slide forward. A perfect place for a dog to catch its leg and maybe, do some damage if you come to a stop really quickly. Here we've got our standardized trunk test at play. A stroller, a backpack, a couple of bags of groceries, a diaper bag, and a soccer ball. And at 971 liters, even with the batteries stored in the back of this vehicle, we're at Subaru Forester territory there, and almost as much as the Subaru Outback, if you can believe it. This thing can take a lot of gear. Now, when you compare this to the Prius Liftback, the only thing is that you don't have sort of this wagon style. It's more of a sloped rear end, which makes it a little less usable, particularly if you do want to try and put your family dog back here. But in general, that Prius Liftback still has excellent trunk capacity as well at around 700 liters. Now let's talk about car seats here for a minute with the Prius V, because there are a lot of Toyota vehicles that are really difficult to reach the anchor system for putting your car seats in. I was hoping that wouldn't be the case with the Prius V because it is more family focused. Unfortunately, these are the most challenging car seat anchors that I've ever tried to use in a vehicle, so much so that I just gave up on them and wound up using the seatbelt technique and putting the seatbelt through the car seat instead, just because I could not figure it out. Now, we've flipped around our car seat and reconfigured it to be rear facing here so I can show you what legroom will be like for a front passenger when you've got a rear-facing car seat in place. And according to our measuring tape here, we've got about 9 inches with the car seat that we use, and that means that I've kind of got decent headroom. My legroom is pretty close to maxed out. This puts it on par with smaller SUVs and perhaps kind of hatchbacks as well. Not great, but also not awful. You know, every time you're shopping around for a new car, I think it's really important that you put together a list of priorities in your mind as to what's important to you. Everyone's answer is going to be different, and in the case of the Prius V, if reliability, safety, and fuel efficiency are right at the top of your list, it could be just the ticket. But you know what? At just shy of $35,000 for this tester that we're in here this week with the technology package, it's not a very exciting car to drive. It's also just not very well executed here in the interior. So for my money, I'd probably spend an extra few $1,000 and go for a well-equipped Lexus CT200H like we tested a couple of years ago on the program. It's a bit sportier, the interior is certainly far better executed, and it feels just a bit more solid as a vehicle in general. But if having a station wagon isn't high up on that list of priorities for you, I would also highly recommend that you check out the Prius Liftback, because in so many ways it's a much better vehicle than this, and it does offer better fuel efficiency, and it does also come in at a cheaper price point. You can get the Prius Liftback with the technology package for just about $30,000, so it's a better value as well in my mind, and a better car in general. Why Toyota didn't roll out a redesign of the Prius V at the same time as the Prius Liftback is beyond me, because at this point it kind of just feels like it's been left in that traditional Prius's dust. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this car. How do you think it compares to that Prius Liftback? Is it still relevant? Am I being too harsh? You can leave a comment below. Please subscribe while you're at it, and then bounce over to familywheels.ca for our report card on the Prius V with a bullet point list of what we like and don't like so much about this car here this week. I'm going to throw my parka back on, throw my toque back on, brave these elements. Hopefully by the time I see you next, we're in slightly warmer conditions. Next time around, we'll be in the Honda Ridgeline, by the way. Until then, thanks for tuning in and have a great week.